Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to J Raids and welcome to another Raid Shadow Legends video. In today's video, I'm going to do something a little bit different, or at least a little bit new than what I have done on my channel so far. And, if you guys know me for all of the arena reports that I do write and create out, it's a lot of practical knowledge and theory. And I want to start putting it to the test and show you guys how I think through my arena fights, especially within the live arena, now that the season has started. And so I want to do this where I do a little bit of VOD review and I want to walk through all of my matches in a given day. And I'll talk through how I'm thinking about how I approach these matches and really lay in a lot of that foundational knowledge and theory that I've been preaching to you guys over the course of a couple of weeks so far, especially if you guys have started reading the reports from Reddit. Really appreciate you guys sticking around for that. And let's dive into it. I really want to focus down in on live arena because I think it is the most engaging and has another layer of complexity to arena because of the draft system, which I'm something that I enjoy deeply. So let's pull up the video, the VODs, and we'll kind of start from there. So this is a brand new day. This morning I recorded another 10 fights and I'm starting at 330 LP MMR, whatever you want to call it. This is fairly high up at this point in the season. So all of the fights that we're going to be facing are going to be, in my opinion, fairly tough. Now, my strategy overall is fairly simple in terms of draft. I think Solinar is my strongest champion. And, I'm going to be having more videos about draft stuff later on. In live arena, I think those are just more content areas that I do want to put out more dedicated guides or areas to talk about. But generally for me right now, Solinar is my strongest champion and is someone that, I tend to go in as the first pick. Unfortunately, you guys can't really see. I guess I'll just let you guys really peek at it real quick. But again, these are the champions that I use in my arena roster. I'm just going to flash real quick. You guys can pause and take a look if you want. But our opponent goes in with the Crixia and the Predator. Now, when I instantly see Predator, I have a pretty specific idea of how I want to play things out. And that is, I want to go in with the Embrius. I think he's one of my counters into Predator. Unfortunately, my opponent picked away Embrius here. So again, I have to kind of shift. But generally speaking, when my opponent drafts Embrius, I'm looking for both Neve as well as Embrius. I think those are my two core champions dealing with Predator. But unfortunately, he is able to pick away my Embrius. He goes in with the Nice and the Embrius. And now I still need to pick at least one more damage dealer. Now, one thing when I am thinking about drafting into, I'll pause real quick here, but when I am thinking about drafting into Predator, as in when I want to leave him up, I'm generally wanting to draft 3 damage dealers. And the reason is fairly simple, because one, when I let Predator through, let's say they ban one of my damage dealers, and then I'm only left with 1 damage dealer, the fight's instantly over if the Predator block survives my last damage dealer. So when I draft 3 damage dealers, even if he bans 1, I still have 2 that go through, and they can't both be block revived. That's just a general, simple sort of my thought process when I do Predator. Now, unfortunately, my opponent here goes in with the Fabian 5th, which I was a little bit worried of. I was thinking if I wanted to pick away the Fabian myself, but then that puts me in a spot where, I'm 2 damage dealers into Predator, and that's a little bit dangerous. So I end up with the Neve ban, and I ban his Crixia. Now, luckily, his Crixia was 6 stars, his Fabian's 5, so his Fabian was missing a good amount of speed. And that actually helped me out in this specific fight, which you guys will see real soon. So as the fight's starting, I'm actually fairly surprised. I go into this thinking that the fight's instantly over because I'm just going to get locked out, right? I have 3 champions that are very dependent on having their skills up, with the semi-exception of Solinar. But because he doesn't have a 5-star, or he doesn't have a 6-star blessing on his Fabian, I actually got to cut in here. And I'm actually lucky where I not only strip the stone skin off of the nice, but I also don't weak hit on to the Fabian. And that lets me to place my block passive and block active skills. And this looks like a very commanding position, right? He goes in, he does a little tappy tap, and I'm able to, oh, I get the True Fear. And what do I do here? I go in for the kill on the Nice. The Nice has block passives and block actives, so he can't actually use his passive transform. It's actually a little bit scary because his Predator is alive and killed me here. But oh, Enfeeble chipping away. So right now his Predator has 20% evade chance, and luckily for me, even though he is able to kill everyone, oh my god, this was such a cheese moment. So there's a really fun interaction between Solinar and Embrius, right? Because there are 3 allies dead on my side, Embrius tries to place 3 necrosis stacks onto my Solinar, but because my Solinar transforms debuffs into random buffs, I get 3 random buffs here, being perfect veil, block damage, and increase crit damage. Which, if you guys can't tell from this situation, are kind of nuts. Right, I get a block damage, and so I get a. Is that my turn? I get it first turn, and I do an A1, and that kills the Predator. I was very hopeful that would kill Embrius as well, but no matter. I think I have one more hit here. And this is actually a little bit tricky because the Embrius gets a revive on death, right? This is the first time I've killed him, and now my 2 turns of block damage is running out. But look what happens here on his turn. On his next turn, he tries to place another 3 necrosis stacks, and I get block damage, increase attack, and increase crit damage. And so for my last 4 turns of Solinar, I got block damage on. So I completely cheesed this fight. This was a complete free win given to me by Solinar. But I also was lucky enough that his Fabian was slower than my Galathir, which is fairly rare because he didn't have a 6-star. So the first fight, I think we got through. We cheesed it. I think I would have drafted a little bit differently there, but let's jump into the next one. We're actually facing off against Shinny here. So we got like 2 YouTubers back to back, or at least 2 people that had YouTube in their name. And this one's gonna be a little bit tough. I have some knowledge of what Shinny has in terms of his champions. I've seen some of his live arena videos, so I have a little bit of knowledge into what he has. Right, he has his he likes his Rhodos that has Death Dealer. He likes his Duchess. He likes his Ancora. So I have some knowledge just off of knowing what champions has. But let's see how the draft pans out. So again, I go in with the Embrius, or sorry, the Solinar, and I see and I see Predator, right? So Predator kick in immediately. I know, okay, I want to draft Embrius. He's my best answer. And I want to have Neve because her block damage is very good at preventing Predator from killing people, and she can place Block Revive, which prevents the Hunter's Gaze, right? I do actually go with the Crixia here instead of the Embrius. I think probably be fine to go with Embrius instead of Crixia. I don't think it actually matters in draft, but we'll see how things go on the 4-5. Let's see what Shinny picks here. Maybe I could try to play this at a little bit faster speed. How do I even do that? I don't know if I can do that here, but sorry about that. We'll try to speed things up here. Let's just fast forward then. And yeah, so he goes in with his Duchess and Rhodos, 2 champions that we do know he has. And I went in with my Galathir and my Embrius. So again, these are I think this is a very, very common 5 draft from me. Like, this is a very common draft that I would use. And he goes in with the Donatello. So this is a pretty standard draft. And normally, I think going into this, I would feel pretty happy about how things landed. And I think I ended up banning the Armons. So just purely off draft, I feel pretty comfortable in this position. I have my answers into Predator, and I can ban off his champion that uh, can strip buffs or place polymorph, right? And he ends up banning my Solinar. So I go into this feeling pretty confident. I have my answers, and hopefully I have a lockout, right? He goes in with the Duchess lead, and we'll see how things go. So off the bat, I know that my Crixia is probably going to be the fastest champion on the board. I do actually get the grip and the lockdown on to the Predator, but I don't end up getting the Donatello, which means that he can reset his abilities when the Donatello goes, right? So that's one of the big reasons why Donatello is fantastic in the arena, because it can be a counter into lockout champions. Now, unfortunately, I think for Shinny, his speed tunes are a little bit weird, where I think his Donatello has, because he lacks so much resistance, he sacrificed a lot of speed. And which means that his Rhodos is somehow the fastest champion. It is insane that Rhodos is the fastest champion of this four, when I think Rhodos has a base speed of like 90 or something like that. So even right here, it feels very confident, right? Um, his speed tune, I think ideally for him, he should probably have Donatello be the fastest champion, but it's fine for now. And I had my block damage up all the time, so the Predator wasn't able to kill anything, right? So right now, Predator 0% of A chance. All of his guys went on their first turn without doing anything because they're locked out. And then, he comes in with the reset. So right here feels pretty confident, or feels pretty good. I get polymorphed here, which is not the biggest deal. And then it's up to my Embryo, right? Now my Embryo goes. I think I just chuck in a A2 just for the heck of it. I do get a fear. Somehow on the Duchess. I guess Duchess has no resistance, and I go in with the A2. But this is where things go south, like real south. Like, look at the damage. Look at the lack of damage I did. I was expecting this to just like kill his team. Obviously, Rhodos can't be one shot because of his passive, and he does have Donatello, which means that he'll save somebody from dying. But how do I deal so little damage? Like, look at. I wish I could slow this down for you guys, but what's going on? Ooh, frame drop. What's going on? My frames just kind of disappeared somewhere. What is going on? What is going on? Can I? Okay, that was bizarre. I'm gonna hopefully hope that doesn't happen again. But I just want you guys to look at how little damage I do. And this is like with my juiced up Embryo. Like, this is my big boy Embryo. Oh, it's the bolster set. That's insane. It's so hard to tell. There's no like actual stats or indicators. Like, you can't click on a champion to see how much health they have. But apparently that's a 50k bolster shield. Like, that small shield buff was 50k health, which I think doesn't make sense, because then it would seem like the Predator has like 200k health, which likely is far from possible. But I mean, it's so insane how much of the damage got soaked up by this bolster set. Uh, and he also has a shield set. He has a bolster and a shield set. That's crazy. But as you can see, I just don't deal any damage, which I just got really, really outplayed by. And then I think he just cleans me up because he has a Rhodos with 9-piece Merciless and a Death Dealer. Like, at this point, it's just completely doomed, right? He's reset all of his skills, and my only damage dealer is going to get block revived. I think this was a really interesting kind of situation. This in this point, what happened in my draft? I want to go back in the draft because in this point it would have been nice to have another damage dealer on my team instead of the Crixia. Uh, I see, because I have third pick Crixia. I think this is something that I need to get a little bit better of, and it's just figuring out the right prioritization of when I want to pick champions. And I think this Crixia, although helped me in terms of making sure that I locked out my opponent's champions, I was really lacking in damage because once my Embrius, my only damage dealer, got a turn, he didn't kill anybody, which was a little bit of a problem. And again, if you guys remember when I talked a little bit about drafting into Predator specifically, having 3 damage dealers is good too, in case one of them gets block revived. I think in this case, I should have drafted Embrius third because I do know that I want Embrius into Predator. He's really good because I have him built slower than Predator. And then the Necrosis stacks can help me to 1v1 the Predator at the end. So what I should have done here is I should have went Embrius third, and then that gives me flexibility on my 4-5 to pick Crixia or another damage dealer after I see Rhodos and the touches. So that should have been what I went to do. Now I should have went Embrius third, and then maybe I could go like Marius with the Galathier. So I think I would have benefited from not picking Crixia third in terms of my draft. And then as you guys can see here at the end, after the Rhodos chunked out my Embrius, I think I just get block revived by the by the Predator here. And then now I have no damage dealers and the game's over, right? So I think I just scoop from that point. I think that was just like there's more to draft than I think most people give credit to. And in that case, I think I put myself in a bad spot. Of course, not knowing that he would have such tanky units and very big shield sets, right? But I think I could have put myself in a better position had I did my draft order a little bit differently. But in terms of my 1-2, I'm still fairly happy to pick Crixia. Like when I'm picking second, I like going Solnar Crixia because that 1 gives me a lockout champion and 2 gives me a reset champion in case both of them get through. Now he goes something a little bit interesting, my opponent here. Diabetes Koningin or something like that. Very interesting. He has a 6-star Shuzen. He has a Theodosia as well as a Sanguine Maria. I think I just want to call out like the Sanguine Maria 6-star Chainbreaker. I think that's a super cool shout out. And that's a really good idea. I think I might copy that for myself if I actually find the right gear to put on my Sanguine Maria. But in this case, it's very clear that my opponent wants to go first, especially with the Shuzen. And my common strategy to go first teams is to go Neve plus Galathier because 1, the block damage, and then 2, the Mercurial, right? So I end up in the same place where I have a 5 draft that looks exactly the same. And I go in with the with the Sanguine Maria band because even though he has Rhodos who can hit through my Neve, he can't really deal with Stone Skin very easily, or Mercurial for that fact. And so if I eliminate the biggest threat, which is the Sanguine Maria, he's only left with 1 damage dealer and 3 supports, right? Now in this case, I expect him, and I think this is another thing that you should start to think about, but in terms of what I expect my opponent to ban, I expect him to ban the Crixia, right? He has the Rhodos who can hit through block damage. And so I suspect that he might feel comfortable leaving my Neve up. That is my hypothesis going in. And if I think that happens, I'm pretty happy because I get to use my Crixia, right? Instead here, he actually bans my Solinar, which leaves me up with my lockout champion, right? My Crixia, which is, I think, really nice for me because if I look at my opponent's side, one, even though I was right in that he left up Neve because Rhodos can kill Neve through block damage, the Rhodos can't kill my Embrius or my Galathier, right? And once I lock out his side of the board, yes, I could weak hit on Rhodos and not lock him out, but someone like the Theodosia, the Shuzen, and the Stifi are all susceptible to being locked out, and when they do get locked out, they're kind of useless, to be honest. I'm glad that the Crixie got through because I think it's a pretty key element in terms of beating his team. Unfortunately, I don't actually have Supersonic on my Crixie anymore. So I don't actually get a cut in here, but he uses the Shuzen, gives an extra turn to the Rhodos, and of course the Rhodos just absolutely destroys the Neve, right? Hey, he has a Death Dealer too, that's kind of cool. I'm thinking of putting... I don't know, I'm still considering it, but I eventually want to move my Death Dealer over to my Rhodos as well. I think it's just a little bit better on Rhodos than it is on... better on Rhodos than it is on Carnage right now. And yeah, I go in for the lock-in. I didn't lock out the Rhodos, but what's really good about specifically Galathyr into Rhodos is that Galathyr's revive gives everybody perfect veil, which means that Rhodos can only target Galathyr, right? And in this case, Galathyr is strong affinity against Rhodos and has Mercurial, which Rhodos can't deal with, right? Now, of course, my opponent does have a Death Dealer on his Rhodos, which means that he can, crit on my Galathyr. But I'm able to go in with my Embrius and just wipe out his entire team, right? After he's locked out, he goes first. He has no more protective buffs on his team, and there's nothing much that he can do to prevent me from just smacking him. Unlike Shini, this guy doesn't have like 50k in shield sets across the board. So I think this one was a fairly easy sort of fight. Go back to the draft and let's see. I think I'm happy with my 1-2. I think most of the time your 1-2 is pretty set. You have two champions in your mind that you want to pick every game, and that kind of goes to your 1-2 spot. And so for me, that's Solinar and Crixie. I think they're just the most powerful as well as the most flexible in terms of my roster. So I'm pretty happy with this 1-2 right here. I have the Neve plus the Galathyr. What do I think about that? It's generally my like flex line. Like, it's just good into most things to have these two champions. I think it's hard for me to pick another damage dealer without knowing what exactly he's going to pick for his 4-5. I think overall this draft is fine, and so far another thing to me is he hasn't put up anything that is super ban worthy to me, right? When I think about like immediate bans, like I think of like lockout champions as like very high volatility, right? Or I think of like in the past, if I pick Sifi and then they pick Nell, right? Nell would be an instant sort of target for a ban. But so far, my opponent hasn't really put up anything on the table that is like screaming, I need to ban this champion, which means I have more flexibility, right? In terms of designing my draft around picking his 4-5. So because for me, I feel confident so far in the 3 champions that he's picked that I don't need to ban any of them, and I can simply ban a champion that he puts on his 4-5. I have a lot more flexibility in terms of my draft. And then he picks Sifi Rhodos, which again, to me, I think none of the champions here are anything that are super scary. Honestly, I think the best champion in a vacuum here is the Theodosia. But I know that this sort of draft is, in my opinion, a little bit weak because the Rhodos has a very hard time dealing with Mercurial, which I know my Galathyr has, and generally force affinity champions. Of course, he does have a Death Dealer, which makes it a lot easier to deal with. But this sort of 3 support 1 damage dealer definitely needs like an AoE damage dealer to really be super effective, right? For me, that's someone like a Embrius or a Marius. And in this case, this is just not a very scary draft for me to design around, right? Like, I could even slam like a UDK if I had somebody better, or if I had a second damage dealer, and then I slam a UDK 5th into the Rhodos, and then he's pretty sad, right? But anyways, I think that one was fairly straightforward as things go. Now this one's actually kind of cool. This guy Jose1279. Look at his MMR. 819 current seasonal points and almost 80,000 MMR in live arena. And I think at this point, fairly similar draft and fairly similar logic, right? I first pick my Solnar because he's the best. My opponent picks Fabian plus Marius, and my two counters for these champions are Neve and Crixia, right? Neve for the Marius and Crixia for the Fabian. So it's very sort of simple and intuitive drafting that good to not overcomplicate things. Because I think your first three picks are generally like your core picks. They're picks that are flexible and good at dealing with a wide range of stuff. He goes in with the Predator as well as the Garrel. And of course, when I see this, I'm thinking Embrius, right? That's sort of my answer. Let's see what I end up going. Usually I would go just these two, which I do. Okay. Well, that's not very interesting, I guess. But we'll see how the fight turns out. And let's see if the ban has anything interesting for us. Oh, I remember this one. I get completely stomped by this guy. But this is interesting, right? Because he picks a second lockout champion. He picks the Yumeko. So now he has two lockout champions, right? He has the Fabian and the Yumeko. And I think it's fairly obvious on what he's aiming to do here, right? He wants to leave up the Solinar and ban my Crixia. That way he has two lockout champions against my Solinar, which means that then he can debuff my Solinar, which honestly isn't, that useful. It's not like he has buffers. And in my opinion, I think it's a relatively weak draft in terms of wanting to pick this kind of style into Solnar, because Solnar can just A1 constantly just kill off the very squishy targets that are generally your lockout champions, right? So I just have to ban one of his 3 damage dealers that I think is the most scary. And to me, I think it's the Garrel, because I know he's not going to ban my Neve. Or at least in my head, right? He's going to ban Crixie, he's not going to ban Neve. And because he has both the Predator, which can hit through block damage with his A3, and he has the Garrel, which she can hit through block damage as well. So to me, it's not worth banning any of the lockout champions, because I know he's going to ban out my Crixia, and then he's still going to have a lockout champion while I don't have a refresh champion. And so my hope here is just that the Solinar, even though he gets locked out, is just going to spam some A1s and be able to kill off some of the squishier targets. So we'll see how this goes. This is actually kind of interesting. And one thing that catches me... Okay, never mind. It doesn't quite. But this is the one thing that really messes me up. And we'll kind of see how it goes from here. But let's see. One thing is my Embrius... the block damage wasn't protected, which was a big yikes. And that's what I'm talking about, right? Like the Solnar just randomly A1 for, I don't know. I don't know what happened. I think it was probably a mastery that gives turn meter on a critical hit and my Galathir crit or something like that. My Solnar just A1'd and almost took out the whatchamacallit. I make a mistake here. This is actually this is a mistake, because I go in with the A1 to knock off the Mercurial stack on the Marius. I can't remember why I did that, but I should have just killed the Fabian. I was lucky enough that my Neve actually went before his Marius, so that I can run my block damage off, so that I can then place a new one on. But the Marius goes next, and he actually A3s, which is fine. So I get the counterattack anyways. But this is where I get kind of wrecked on, and that's Stormcaller for you. That's Stormcaller Marius. If you have Stormcaller and you have Marius, I think that is genuinely one of the strongest things you can do in the arena right now. And look at this. He AoE stunned my board. Somehow I got a resisted on the Galathir, which, to my knowledge, Stormcaller doesn't need accuracy, but maybe it does. And then at this point, he's able to kill my Embrius, and then he has the lockout here. So this is like really bad, right? He can do his AoE nuke again. I don't have any turn meter to go next. and his Predator can block revive again, right? So this all went south real fast, and then he's just gonna AoE again. I somehow get a block damage up, but it doesn't really matter, right? Because now I can block revive, and the fight's over. So I just, am I sticking around for something? I don't really remember what I'm sticking around for, because both my damage dealers are block revived, and that means my Solnar passive can't go off. So I think I just get one shot here. Oh, I get 2 shot. How did he get he got an AoE back again? I want to think about this draft, because once I got into the game at this point, I lost, right? It doesn't matter what I did during the fight. I just lost on the spot. Actually, could I have like wanded? No, because I don't have. No. I had maybe the small chance to like reflect the stun with a wand, but he did have a total guard stack. So once I got into the draft at this point, the game was lost, right? And it's tough. I think, what could I possibly done? I could have banned Marius instead, with the assumption that high-ranking individuals like him just have Stormcaller on the Marius. I think the other option for me was to draft Alil, and then this lets me to go in with a go first. I think that is the best option for myself in terms of how I strategize against lockout champions. Like I think I should have picked Alil over the Galathir here. And then that would give me 3 damage dealers to click off my box into making sure that I'm safe into the Predator. And I'd have an option to beat the Fabian, right? So I think it's like this. I went into this draft thinking, okay, I'm likely going to ban Fabian, right? Fabian is my ban going into the draft up until his 5th pick, which was the Yumeko. And now that changes things for me, which is a really good draft for him if, you have to change priorities for bans mid-draft. And so for me, obviously, I would have no idea. I wouldn't be able to know that he would last pick the Yumeko. But if I went with the Alil with the Embrius on my 4/5, then that would allow me to go into his 5th pick with a more flexible ban, right? Because going into this 5th pick, I had in mind, okay, I want to ban Fabian. And then he throws a curveball at me with his 5th pick Yumeko, right? And so for me going forward, I need to kind of go into the 5th pick if because I picked first, he gets to pick last. In this case, I need to have a more flexible draft in order to be able to switch my ban to a potential 5th pick, instead of just thinking in my head, I'm just going to ban the Fabian, right? And if this was Alo and the fight played out, I would have been able to go first, one shot I would have been able to ban the Yumeko. I would go first, I would one shot the Fabian, and then I would go second with my Neve. I would place block debuffs out, hopefully protected. And then when the Marius goes, I have protected block debuffs and he can't stun me, right? So I think for me, this is a good little learning spot. And this is really influenced by the draft, because I was not flexible enough with my lineup going into his 5th pick. I should have picked a more flexible draft in order to have more flexibility. And I just have to remember that going forward. I think that is a really good example of how draft overall influence a game. Because once I loaded in, I lost, right? I immediately lost when I loaded in with these 4 champions again. So of course, classic Polnar first. He goes Marius with the Nika. I go Eve with the Crixia, because he's shown me two champions that get locked out nicely. And then I like picking Carnage. I think this is the first time I picked Carnage, but I like picking Carnage in both Marichka as well as the Nice. Getting the block active skills is very important. So that's sort of my answer to that. And then I round off with a third damage dealer. I think for me, because my Carnage is as a death dealer, he's super squishy and he's not super reliable if he's a solo damage dealer. So I generally, when I think about drafting Carnage, I do try to have 3 damage dealers lined up with him, or including him. And we'll see what he picks last. I think he pulls out a pretty interesting pick here, which is the Mesamal. And Mesamal, for you guys, his form 2 actually goes through block damage. So that's something interesting to note, and it's probably signaling that he doesn't want to ban my Neve. So let's see what he ends up banning. For me, I think I just banned the Galith here. Because for me here, it's likely that I get to go out with a lockout first, unless he bans my Vixia, which he doesn't. For me, right, I have the superior speed aura. I have Crixia, who's likely to go first. And then if I take away the Galathier, then he has no CC tools, right? He can't buff strip, he can't stun, and that just allows me to play the game. So for me, the threat assessment is, okay, I get to lock out my opponents. Galathier can't get locked out because he can just swap to his form 2, or maybe just has high resist or whatever, and he can still play the game. So I go in with the lockout again, as predicted. My Pixia goes first, and I get the lockout across the board. Unfortunately, I don't get any buff strips, which is bad because Carnage does absolutely nothing against Stone Skin. Or at least, you know, you have to 50-50 with the A2, which is not very reliable. But this is very, very lucky. The Marichka, God, there's too many champions in this game and too many names for me to remember. The Marichka sends in the Nice with the A1, and that triggers my counterattack from Carnage, who takes off the Stone Skin from the Nice, which worked out very nicely. And then I even get a nice turn, like I get a nice cut in from the Marius. It's very nice that the Marius goes before my Carnage because, you know, he gets to take off the Stone Skin. And then I get to go in with the Carnage, and I get to place my block active and block passives. Now here's the scary part, right? We know Mesamel gonna swap forms, and then she has a big hit that takes out block damage. And I just want to see what happens there. Like, of course, my Carnage is like butter, right? Unless I get the Swift Parry proc. But let's see. Oh, wow. Yeah, I guess I just don't take... I thought I would... That's unlucky. My Neve doesn't get hit enough with the first hit to go below 50% HP, and she only goes below on the second hit. So I could have saved Crixia if the RNG was a little bit better. But I think this is where things get pretty dire, right? I only have an Embrius left. You know, my Neve is sitting on death's door with no heal, and I'm facing a Marichka, right? So this is very important. To me, this is the decision that makes or breaks this match. Obviously, I could go in with the AoE, right? I could just kill the 3 champions. You know, I might weak hit on Mesamil, but it's very likely I still take him out anyways. And then that just leaves me with the Marichka, right? But then, let's say my Neve dies, which it's very likely, maybe just from a random Marichka A1. I'm only left with Marius, and then when I kill the Marichka, she's going to revive the 3 champions, and they're going to have more turn meter than my Embrius, right? And so I'm going to lose. So I can't actually go in with the AoE here because I'm setting myself up to lose when I need to kill the Marichka. So I think what I actually do here is I block revive the Nice. I know I have block active skill or block passive on the Nice, which means that he can't actually survive and transform. And that means that if down the line I have to kill the Marichka, she's not bringing back the Nice, right? So we're going in. I'm surviving a lot more than I expected. And I think our opponent makes a pretty critical misplay here, and it's that he doesn't use the A1 on Marichka to kill my Embrius. So I think I've made the right decision by killing the Nice, but my opponent here actually misplays pretty heavily. He should have been able to kill my Embrius here, and then kill him again once the revive goes off, right? But he makes a grave game losing mistake here, and it's that by he doesn't actually kill my Embrius here. So what I'm able to do is I'm able to then use my swap health ability. This full heals my Embrius, and then I'm able to kill off his remaining nuke. So now puts me in a really good spot, right? I have a full health Embrius. I know that his Marichka will only bring back Marius, as well as the um the wolf lady, the Mezamel. And if it takes one hit from the Marius kills my, and let's say my first life, and because of, you know, the passive on what's his name, on Embrius, he reflects damage on death, right? So I have 2 lives, I reflect damage, I can kill both them with my passive, and then I'd win, right? He goes in with the A2, and I get super lucky again. And unlucky. So I get lucky and unlucky. So somehow, even though his Marius has increased defense, and you know, I only have about 100k health on my Embrius here, his A3 does so little damage. He has a Mind of Marquardt on his Marius. That's kind of interesting. His AoE does so little damage that it not only doesn't kill my Embrius, so that, you know, the reflect damage won't kill the Marius, but I get lucky where he was stunned from the A3. The damage triggered the mastery, which removes a debuff, and then I got a counterattack. So I actually got to take out the Marius there, and of course the reflect damage comes in, kill the Mezamel. And of course, this one I think was down to fight RNG, right? Like, one, I could have simply, when I went in with a lockout with the Pixia, I could have just removed the stone skin, right? If I got rid of the stone skin on the Mesmel, I would have just won the game on the spot. If, you know, if I had got the, oh no, I do get it. I got the Swift Parry from the Carnage, but I guess Mesmel goes through block damage and unkillable. So that's, Mesmel is actually pretty useful in that case. So I guess the Swift Parry didn't really matter. I could have saved the Crixia here, which would have let me reset my abilities, which I'm not sure if that really mattered. But my opponent, again, makes a really critical misplay right here with the Marichka. Like, this is a very, very critical misplay. He should have A1'd, procced my passive, and then I would have lost the game. So I think it's important to see that Arena is more than, you know, as an aggregate. You can misplay an Arena. You can draft poorly. You can have better drafts. You can just play better. There's ways for you to actually make sure that you have higher chances of the game. And I think this goes to show that there was a chance for him to not lose a matchup that I think he shouldn't. Now, let's see where we end off today. We ended off with 399 points, which is fairly good, I think, like 5 days in. And this puts me at top. You guys can't see, but I'm at rank 460, which is barely in the top 500. But if you guys like this video and would like to see more of this kind of stuff, then I'm always happy to make it. This is something that I could probably do on a weekly basis, and I might try that out for a little bit, especially while the season is ongoing. If you guys enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a like and subscribe, and let me know how you guys are doing in your live arena seasons, if you guys are participating. and how far along you guys are. Hopefully this helped you to give a little bit more insight into the complexities of draft and playing out live arena, and even just the the micro kind of decisions that can make or break a game. But hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and peace out, guys. Take care.